want to start today by giving you a little background from an unlikely source. I used to follow a blog by a woman in Toronto. She wrote once or twice a week, maybe sometimes once a month, just about passing things. And this is one of the posts that really impressed me. Can everybody hear this okay?
Oh yeah, great.
This is her post prior to Robbie Burns Day. And it gives you some, well, she's a woman, and this is done in a woman-to-woman cozy fantasy little discussion, perhaps in a little pub. Maybe not. I think it's hosted at home. Okay. It's called the Scottish Casanova. Well, I told you the story of Jean and her Scottish Casanova. Poor Jean. She fell in love with him, and before you know it, she's pregnant. The guy already had at least 2 illegitimate children. Her dad fainted when she told him. He was a big stonemason. The dad, not the playboy. Have a wee drop of whiskey. A single malt scotch. Have some shortbread. No, I didn't bake it. I hunter-gathered it. Picked it up while I picked up the heather when I was down at the market. It's lovely this time of year, the heather. Now, where was I? Oh, yes. Poor Jean. She saw him when he was out walking with his dog. She had her laundry drying on the lawn. Well, the way they used to do that in the country sometimes. The dog walked all over it, right through it. She met him again later at a dance. He wrote stuff. You know, what is about these sweet-talking writers? He'd already gotten Elizabeth, who worked on his parents' farm, pregnant. And his mom, who was widowed the year before, raised the baby girl. Well, he and Jean were already having an affair when the baby was born. Now, next there was Meg, who either miscarried or delivered a stillborn baby, I'm not really sure. Somewhere in there, though, there's Mary. The guy offered to marry Jean, but her parents wouldn't allow that. They sent her away, in fact, so that none of the neighbors would know she was pregnant. Well, the neighbors found out anyway, so Jean returned home. She gave birth to twins, a boy and a girl. She and Romeo lived apart. Truth is, he was in love with Mary at the time. He wrote a famous piece about Mary. She was going to go to Jamaica, but that didn't work out. She died in childbirth, giving birth to his baby. Now, about that time, Jean's dad was afraid that the playboy would run off to Jamaica. He put out a warrant for him, so the guy takes off and spends the summer hiding out at his Auntie Jean's farm. He writes and he writes and he writes, gets another book published. He's super famous by now, like a Scottish rock star. As famous as Rod Stewart. How's the whiskey? More shortbread. So anyway, a big star is touring the country, and in his travels, meets up again with Jean. Again. Poor Jean, she gets pregnant. Again. Jean's parents kick her out. Again. She's destitute, so Mr. Superstar finds her and their twins a place to stay. A few weeks later, Jean gives birth to twins. Again. Sadly, the baby girls both died when they were just a few weeks old. Well, after all that, Jean's parents finally gave the consent for them to marry. The fact that their future son-in-law is really famous may have had something to do with that. Under Scottish law, their twins, and the 2 previous twins, are not considered illegitimate once Jean and Loverboy get married. If you look at the marriage document, it says, irregularly married some years ago. Irregularly. In the meantime, the Scottish Casanova is traveling back and forth to Edinburgh, where he's a big celebrity. He's got this married woman, Agnes. She's separated from her husband, who lives in Jamaica. And the Scottish Casanova writes her passionate poetry. Some of that gets published, making him even more famous. He also gets Jenny, her maid, pregnant. Jenny gives birth to a baby boy, but she gets sick and gets fired from her job. Well, Casanova sends her some money. Not that he had a lot of money. As famous as he was, he signed away the copyrights to most of his work. He had to take on work as a tax inspector. And that's how he met the barmaid. She worked in the town where he and Jean lived. Anne was 10 years younger than him, sorry. And you guessed it, he gets her pregnant too. She dies in childbirth. Guess who raises the little girl? Jean. The woman should have a statue in her honor. The guy had 14 children by 6 women. He died really young, at the age of 36, heart disease. And on the day of his burial, Jean was giving birth to little Max, their last child. Poor Jean. She was only 31 years old and had lived more years than someone 3 times her age. Oh, I didn't tell you her name. Jean Armour, great name for a warrior who, as Shakespeare wrote, suffered the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune. It would have been Mrs. Burness, but her hubby changed his family name when he was first climbing to fame. By the way, there is a statue in Jean's honor. She is, after all, the long-suffering wife of Scotland's most famous poet, the bard himself, Robert Burns. And around the world, on January 25th, Scots, and those who love them, raise a glass to Burns. This Robbie Burns Day, give a thought to Jean, who loved him with all her heart. She lived another 35 years after Robbie died, and there never was another man like him in her life. Now, you understand now why at every formal Scottish Burns Night event, there is always a toast to the lassies. That's the background, and we'll have that in a minute because Jimmy's going to do that for you again. But in the meantime, I want you to know that a lot of historians, poets otherwise, believe that Jean was the love of Robert's life. He wrote more poems about her or to her than the others. 14 he wrote about Jean. And this is one, a very short one for you. I'll try to get back into the Scottish now. It's called I Love My Jean. Oh, all of the Alps the wind can blaw, I dearly like the west. For there the bonny lassie lives, the lassie I love the best. There wild woods grow and rivers row and mony a hills between, but day and night my fancy's flight is ever wi' my Jean. I see her in the dewy flowers, I see her sweet and fair. I hear her in the tuneful birds, I hear her charm the air. There's not a bonny flower that springs by fountain, shaw, or green. There's not a bonny bird that sings, but minds me of my Jean. By the way, the blogger who wrote the female to female that I butchered, that blogger now lives here on the ridge.
What?
With me! She was Ruth Adams then, and the blog was called Widows and Orphans. And Ruth and I worked years and years and years before, and you all know that story. But anyway, so the blogger was here. I tried to get her to read it herself. Wasn't feeling like that. Anyway, I love you, lassie. Now, where's Jimmy Marsh? Jimmy Marsh has promised he'd like to do the official toast to the lassies. Look at him. Boy, he looks fabulous. Aye, laddie, you're looking very, very good. It's all yours.
And all of that time with all of those women, he still had time to write, what, 498?
I know.
So if you've never looked at the complete works of Burns, there's a lot of good poetry. I'll keep this really clean today. A lot of times, well, ever since I started putting a kilt on, I get a lot of women come up to me and say, what do you wear underneath there? And I says, on a good day, just lipstick. So, this, anybody who's been to Scotland has been to Tesco. It's like they're thrifties.
Yeah.
So this old Scotsman goes into Tesco one day and he's walking by this young lassie at the checkout counter. The young lassie says, "Your barracks doors are open." He walks in. So anyway, he carries on shopping. He's down by the vegetables and the fruit and stuff, and one of the young grocery boys comes up and says, "Did you check yourself before you came in the store?" He says, "Why? What's wrong?" He says, "Your fly's open." Oh, okay, so he does it up, and on he's going out to check out all of his groceries, he walks up to the same clerk, the young girl that said, "Are your barracks doors open?" when you came in. So he come back and he's checking groceries up, and he said, "By the way, miss," he says, "when I walked in and you said the barrack doors were open," he says, "you didn't happen to see a young soldier there, a great big tall soldier standing at attention, did you?" She says, "No, just a wrinkly old veteran on 2 old rucksacks." Pretty clean. Anyway, Burns loved the lassies, obviously, and he loved his, two of that little footnote, two of the women that he loved the most in his life was his mother and an aunt that helped raise him. But he was quite a character, and you know, you delve into the history of the man and what he was a tax collector and this sort of stuff, and lived in a pretty rough time. So, but the most important thing to Burns was the lassies. The most important thing to me in life is the lassie, my mother, and my lassie. And without the lassies, us gentlemen, and not so gentle gentlemen, and us loafers, we wouldn't be here. So what I want to do is I want to have the men stand with me, just the boys, the lads. Grab there's a little bit of scotch in the corner there, or grab whatever you've got. Stand with me, gentlemen. And it's a real hard toast to do. It's really simply to the lassies.
To the lassies. So, there's a serious side to Robert Burns, obviously. Not all fun and lassies. And this poem, when I was looking for something to read today, this poem came up as being very pertinent to what's going on today. In troubled times, controversial times, we all have our own thoughts. But this one applies. From 200 years ago, it still applies. Well, a man's a man for all that. Is there for honest poverty that hangs his head and all that, the coward slave? We pass him by, we dare be poor for all that. For all that and all that, our toils obscure and all that. The rank is but the guinea stamp, the man's the gowd for all that. What though on hamely fare we dine, we're hodden grey and all that. Gie fools their silk, the knaves their wine. A man's a man for all that and all that. The tinsel show and all that. The honest man, though e'er sae poor, is king of men for all that. You see Bon Berkey called a lord, what struts and stares and all that. Though hundreds worship at his word, he's but a coof for all that. For all that and all that. His ribbon, star and all that. The man of independent mind, he looks and laughs at all that. A prince can mak a belted knight, a marquis, duke and all that, but an honest man's aboon his might. Good faith, he maunna fa that, for of all that and all that, their dignities and all that, the pith of sense and pride of worth are higher rank than all that. Then let us pray that come it may, as come it will for all that sense and worth o'er all the earth shall bear the gree and all that, for all that and all that. It's coming yet for all that. that man to man, world o'er, shall brothers be for all that. That, I think, even if you don't understand all the words, is pretty relevant. And one final word. I'm not sure if whether Robert Burns wrote this toast or not. He should have if he didn't. It's my favorite. Was toasted at many functions I've been at. It's a wee bit toast. May the best you've ever had be the worst you'll ever see. May a moose nail your pantry with a teardrop in its eye. May your lum keep reeking blithely till you're old enough to die. May I be just as happy as I wish you I to be, a wee bit toast. Thank you.